I went to college with one of my best friends, who I'll call Ethan for the story. Ethan and I had known each other since the 5th grade, and we'd been really close all throughout high school. However, that's when he started to make bad choices, and overall his life started to go downhill. I won't share any of the personal details for the story, and to be honest they don't really matter for it, but eventually I did invite him to go camping in the woods with me with the goal of having a bro chat with him. We'd been camping a few times before, and I figured going to the woods might help limit Ethan's access to bad substances and some of his other friends long enough for us to have a heart-to-heart. The woods we picked were about an hour's drive from town, a dense tangle of towering pines and overgrown underbrush that seemed to swallow up the world beyond. It was late afternoon when we got there, the sun already sinking low, painting the sky with streaks of orange and red. The air was crisp, carrying that earthy smell of moss and pine needles, but there was something else too, a heaviness that settled over the place as we hauled our gear from the car. I brushed it off as my imagination, focusing instead on setting up the tent and gathering firewood. Ethan helped, though I could tell his mind was elsewhere. He'd been quiet lately and withdrawn, and I was hoping this trip would give us a chance to reconnect. By the time night fell, we had a decent fire going, its flickering light pushing back the darkness that pressed in from all sides. The woods were alive with sound, crickets chirping, leaves rustling in the breeze, and the occasional snap of a branch in the distance. We sat across from each other on makeshift seats of logs and rocks, the fire crackling between us, casting shadows that danced across Ethan's face. "Man, it's been too long since we did something like this," I said, trying to break the ice. Ethan nodded, staring into the flames. "Yeah, it has. Feels good to be out here." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I'd come here to say. "Ethan, listen. I've been worried about you. You've been going through some stuff, and I just want you to know I'm here for you. We've been through a lot together, bro, and I don't want to see you keep heading down this path." He didn't meet my eyes. Instead, he just poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks drifting into the air. "I know, man. I know I messed up. It's hard, you know. Everything feels like it's spiraling, and I honestly have no idea how to stop it. That's why we're here," I said, leaning forward. "To figure it out together. You're not alone in this." For a second, it felt like I was actually getting through to him. Ethan's shoulders relaxed a little, and he gave a small nod. But then, everything changed. The fire dimmed, like someone had thrown a blanket over it, and the air turned cold, unnaturally so. The sounds of the forest, all that background noise we'd gotten used to, it just stopped. It was like the woods were holding their breath. "Did you hear that?" Ethan whispered, his voice tight as he stared past me into the trees. I turned, squinting into the darkness. "Hear what?" "I don't know. It sounded like something moving out there." I listened hard, my pulse picking up. At first there was nothing, just that eerie silence. Then I heard it, a low, guttural growl, so faint I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. But the look on Ethan's face told me he'd heard it too. "It's probably just an animal," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "Maybe a bear or something." But it honestly didn't sound like a bear. It was too deep and too raw, like it came from something that didn't belong in the woods. We both stood up, moving closer to the fire, our eyes scanning the shadows beyond the campsite. "There," Ethan hissed, pointing with a shaky hand. "What the hell is that?" I followed his finger and felt my stomach drop. Out there, just at the edge of the firelight, stood something. It was tall, way too tall, its silhouette warped and wrong, like a human body stretched and twisted into something else. Its head tilted at an unnatural angle, and two pinpricks of light, eyes maybe, glinted in the dark, locked on us. My skin prickled, every instinct screaming at me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. "Stay back," I managed, snatching a burning branch from the fire and thrusting it toward the thing. The flames flared briefly, illuminating its shape for a split second, a gaunt, bony frame, limbs too long, and fingers that ended in jagged points. Then the light flickered, and it was gone, swallowed by the shadows again. "What is it?" Ethan's voice was barely audible, his breath coming in quick gasps. "I don't know," I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. "But we need to stay calm. Maybe it'll leave if we don't mess with it." So we stood there, frozen, the branch trembling in my grip. The thing didn't move or make a sound. Instead, it just watched us. I could feel its presence, heavy and suffocating, like it was pressing down on my chest. Then, without warning, it slipped back into the trees, vanishing as if it had never even been there. The growl faded, and slowly the forest came back to life. Crickets, wind, the snap of twigs, like nothing had happened. We didn't say a word after that. We threw more wood on the fire and sat there, wide awake, jumping at every rustle and crack until the sky finally lightened with dawn. When morning came, we packed up in silence, avoiding each other's eyes, and hiked back to the car. The whole way home, neither of us mentioned it. I still don't know what we saw that night. Part of me wants to believe it was just our minds playing tricks, stress, exhaustion, maybe even the isolation of the woods messing with us. Maybe it really was just a deer or a bear, distorted by the shadows and our paranoia. But those eyes and that shape, it didn't feel like anything natural. Ethan saw it too, I know he did, but he's never brought it up, and neither have I. The bro chat I'd planned never happened. After that night, Ethan drifted further away. We still talk sometimes, but it's surface level stuff, nothing real. I can't shake the feeling that whatever was out there in the woods changed something between us, like it took a piece of our relationship and left doubt in its place. Sometimes I wonder if it was more than just a monster, if it was a reflection of the darkness Ethan's been carrying, given form for one terrifying moment. All I know is, I haven't been back to those woods since, and I don't think I ever will. The summer after graduating from high school, 3 of my friends and I decided to have one last hurrah before going our separate ways at college. For the purposes of this story, I'll be Pat, and my 3 friends will be Sam, David, and Jake. There was this park about an hour from where we lived that sat on a huge lake and had these trails and an activity center, and we'd gone there several times over the years for various activities. We figured camping on the lake and sitting and talking around a campfire as the sun went down would be a great way to end our time at home. So, one weekend in mid-July, we all loaded up our stuff into my car and set off. The drive over was a blast. We cranked the music, rolled the windows down, and let the warm summer air fill the car. We swapped stories about senior year, homecoming, and the time Jake nearly got us all suspended with that firecracker prank. Sam gloated about how he aced his finals despite barely studying. It was the kind of easy, carefree vibe we'd missed once college split us up. Sam was off to engineering school, David to an art program, and Jake to some liberal arts place. Me personally, I was going to business school halfway across the country. This trip was our last shot to just be us, no responsibilities, and no goodbyes yet. We pulled into the park around noon. The lake shimmered under the sun, surrounded by dense woods and winding trails. We picked a campsite a little off the beaten path, close to the water but tucked away from the families and noisy RVs. It was our spot, quiet and perfect for what we had in mind. We pitched our tents, dragged out the cooler, and got a fire going as the afternoon faded into evening. The sky turned a deep purple, and the crickets started their chorus. It felt right. Sitting around the campfire, we cracked open some sodas and let the bro chat flow. We roasted hot dogs and talked about everything, girls we'd crushed on, the teachers we'd hated, and what we thought college would be like. I remember Jake was mid-story about his disastrous prom date when David nudged me and pointed toward the woods. "Yo, Pat, you see that?" I squinted into the shadows. 4 figures were walking toward us, their silhouettes outlined by the fading light. As they got closer, we realized they were girls, our age, maybe 18 or 19, and, well, pretty attractive. They had this confident stride, like they owned the place, and they were smiling as they approached. "Hey guys," the one in front called out. She had short, curly red hair and a voice that carried over the crackling fire. "Mind if we crash your party? We're camped just down the trail and saw your fire." Jake, being Jake, didn't hesitate. "Heck yeah, pull up a log, we've got plenty of food." They introduced themselves. The redhead was Aaron, then there was Tara with dark braids, Jess with a blonde ponytail, and Casey, who had this quiet, intense vibe and kept her hood up. They said they were locals, just out for a weekend in the woods before college started. We scooted over, handed them some hot dogs, and the night took on a new energy. They were funny and flirty, and seemed genuinely into our stories. Aaron asked about our plans, Tara laughed at Jake's dumb jokes, and Jess kept tossing sticks into the fire, her eyes glinting in the glow. It was pretty amazing at first, 4 random girls just joining us for our last hurrah. We figured it was some kind of luck, maybe the universe throwing us a bonus. Of course the bro chat atmosphere shifted a little bit with them there, but it still felt great. We talked about high school rivalries, our dumbest stunts, and what we'd miss most. Erin leaned in close to me at one point, her voice low. "You guys seem tight, that's rare." "Yeah," I said, grinning, "we've been through a lot." She nodded, but there was something in her eyes, a flicker I couldn't place. With everything else going so right though, I brushed it off. The fire was warm, the company was good, and the night was young. Then Tara actually suggested we all go on a hike. "There's this spot not far from here," she said, standing up and brushing off her jeans. A little clearing with an awesome view of the lake under the stars. You guys should see it. By this time it was late, maybe 10 or 11, but we were buzzing from the night and didn't want it to end. "Let's do it," Sam said, grabbing a flashlight. We doused the fire, stuffed some snacks in our pockets, and followed them into the woods. The trail was narrow, the air cooler away from the fire. The girls led the way, chatting and laughing, their voices echoing through the trees. I picked up on the fact that they seemed to know the path really well, no hesitation and no fumbling. Casey stayed at the back, silent, her hood still up. Admittedly, it was a little weird, but I figured she was just shy. After about 15 minutes, we reached the clearing. It was small, ringed by tall pines, with the lake sparkling below in the moonlight. It was beautiful, but something still felt off. The air was too still here, the sounds of the forest muted. Then the girls spread out, almost like they were positioning themselves, and Erin turned to us with a smile that didn't feel right anymore. "So," she said, her tone shifting, "you guys ever hear about the history of this place?" David raised an eyebrow. "What, like ghost stories?" "Kind of," Tara said, stepping closer to Sam. "People used to come out here a lot, campers and hikers, but some of them didn't leave." Jess giggled, but it wasn't funny. It was sharp, almost mocking. "They say the woods take what they're owed," she added, her ponytail swinging as she tilted her head. I began to laugh nervously. What's that supposed to mean? Then Erin's smile faded abruptly. "It means not everyone's welcome here, and the ones who aren't, well, they don't get to walk away." The vibe flipped so fast I almost couldn't believe it. My stomach twisted and I glanced at my friends. Sam looked confused, David tense, and Jake uneasy. "Okay, that's a weird campfire tale," I said, forcing a chuckle. "Maybe we should head back then." But Casey had already stepped forward, blocking the path we'd come from. She pushed her hood back, revealing a face streaked with dirt, or maybe paint, and eyes that locked onto us like prey. "You're not going anywhere," she said, her voice low and steady. Before we could react, Tara pulled something from her jacket, a knife, small but sharp. Jess and Erin followed suit, each producing a blade from somewhere hidden. My heart slammed against my ribs. "What the hell is this?" I yelled, backing up. "You're trespassers," Erin said, her friendly mask now completely gone. "This land's protected, has been for years. We make sure it stays that way." "Protected?" Sam snapped. "We're just camping." "You don't belong here," Jess hissed, "and the woods need a price." It hit me then. These weren't just crazy girls. This was some kind of ritual, a twisted tradition. They must have lured us out here with a purpose, away from help, and now they were closing in. We were the price. Then David shouted run, and we didn't think twice. We bolted, crashing through the trees, branches clawing at us. Flashlights dropped, snacks forgotten, just pure adrenaline driving us back toward the campsite. I could still hear them behind us, fast and coordinated, like they'd done this before. Their voices called out, taunting us, promising we wouldn't make it. My lungs burned and my legs screamed, but we kept going. The trail blurred underfoot, and I prayed we were heading the right way. Finally, the glow of our smoldering campfire came into view. "The car!" I yelled, pointing toward the parking lot beyond. We didn't stop for our gear. Tents and bags, all of it stayed behind. We piled into my car, hands shaking as I jammed the key into the ignition. The engine sputtered once, then twice, and my heart nearly stopped. Then it roared to life. I floored it, tires spinning on gravel, and we tore out of there. In the rearview mirror, I saw them emerge from the woods, 4 figures standing at the edge, knives glinting in the moonlight. They didn't chase us further, instead they just watched, their faces blank but somehow triumphant. None of us talked the whole drive home, and honestly, what was there to even say? We'd gone from bro chat to running for our lives in hours. When we got back, we locked the doors, crashed in my place, and pretended it never happened. Though in hindsight this was probably a dumb decision, we didn't tell the cops. Maybe we just didn't want to relive it at all. Even so, I can't forget it. Those girls holding up their knives and the way they looked at us, like we were nothing but offerings. I don't know if they were cultists, psychos, or something worse, but they're still out there. And that park? I'll never set foot in it again. Some last hurrahs aren't worth the cost. I have many fond memories of college, a lot of them involving me and my dorm mates Tony and Mike hanging out in our common area. For a while, we had fallen into this consistent schedule where we just sit around and talk most nights for an hour or two, usually around 8 or 9 in the evening. Our dorm was one of those old brick buildings you see on every campus, drafty, with creaky floors and walls so thin you could hear your neighbor sneeze. It wasn't much, but it was home. The common area was most definitely our spot, a cramped little room with a lumpy couch, a wobbly table, and a couple of chairs we'd scavenged from a dumpster at the start of the semester. We'd kick back there after classes, surrounded by empty soda cans, half-eaten bags of chips, and the glow of our phone screens. Looking back, those nights were the best. Tony was the loudmouth of the group, always going off about something, his latest Tinder disaster, a professor who graded like a dictator, or some wild conspiracy he'd read online. Mike was the chill one, usually sprawled across the couch, tossing in sarcastic comments or random facts to mess with Tony. As for me, I just liked being there, soaking it all in, keeping the vibe going. We talk about anything and everything, girls, video games, and plans for the weekend. Sometimes we'd even swap creepy stories, like the one about the janitor who supposedly hanged himself in the basement decades ago. It was all in good fun, a way to unwind. One night, though, things got weird. It started like any other. Tony was in the middle of a rant about how his econ TA was out to get him, pacing the room with exaggerated hand gestures. Mike was scrolling through his phone, half listening, while I leaned back in one of the chairs, nursing a warm energy drink. The room was dim, lit only by a flickering desk lamp we duct taped to the wall and the faint moonlight slipping through the blinds. Outside, the campus was quiet, save for the occasional shout from some drunk freshmen stumbling back to their room. Then I heard it, a soft, scraping sound, like someone dragging a fingernail across a rough surface. It was faint, barely noticeable over Tony's voice, and I figured it was just the wind messing with the old window frames. But then it happened again, sharper this time, coming from the corner near the built-in bookshelf. I sat up, tilting my head. "Yo, hold up," I said, cutting Tony off. "You guys hear that?" Tony stopped mid-sentence and shot me an annoyed look. "Hear what, dude? I'm trying to tell a story here." "That noise, like scraping or something, over by the shelf." Mike lowered his phone, squinting toward the corner. "I didn't hear anything. You sure it's not just this dump falling apart?" I shrugged, feeling a little dumb. "Maybe. I guess it's an old building." Tony grinned, leaning into it. "Oh, come on, man. What, you think it's the ghost janitor? Maybe he's pissed we didn't mop the floor." We all laughed, and Tony launched back into his TA saga. But for some reason I couldn't shake it. The sound came again, scrape, 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 slow and deliberate, like someone testing how quiet they could be. Eventually, Mike's head snapped up. "Okay, now I hear it," he said, sitting up straighter. "What the hell is that?" Tony frowned and crossed his arms. "Probably just pipes, or rats. This place is a dump." The noise didn't stop. Instead, it got louder and more insistent, shifting from a scrape to a faint tapping, like knuckles brushing against wood. It was definitely coming from the bookshelf, or maybe behind it. My stomach began to twist. The shelf was one of those cheap, flimsy things bolted to the wall, stacked with textbooks, a couple of Tony's action figures, and a dusty speaker we never used. There wasn't much space back there, but the wall it was attached to, that was the one we shared with the hallway. "Maybe someone's screwing with us," I said, trying to sound casual. "You know, banging on the wall from the other side." Mike grabbed his phone and turned on the flashlight, aiming it at the shelf. "Let's check it out then. I'm not sitting here listening to that all night." We got up, moving toward the corner. The tapping paused, then started again, faster now, almost urgent. Tony grabbed a textbook off the shelf like it was a weapon, while I ran my hands along the edges, looking for anything loose. Mike shone the light behind it, illuminating the narrow gap between the shelf and the wall. Nothing. Just dust and a couple of cobwebs. "See, told you guys," Tony said, relaxing a bit. "It's just the dorm being creepy as usual." We trudged back to our spots, but the second we sat down, there was a loud thud, like something heavy hitting the floor right above us. We froze, staring at the ceiling. The room upstairs was empty. The guy who lived there had dropped out weeks ago, and no one had moved in yet. What was that?" Mike asked, his voice low. "It's probably just," I started, but another thud cut me off, followed by that damn scraping again, this time from under the table. My heart slammed against my ribs. I yanked my legs up onto the chair, like a kid scared of a monster under the bed. Tony's eyes went wide. "Okay, no way that's normal. Is someone in here?" Mike swung his flashlight around the room, checking under the couch, behind the chairs, everywhere. Nothing. But the noises kept coming, bouncing around like they were playing with us. A tap from the shelf, a scrape from the ceiling, a thud under the floor. It was like the room itself was alive and closing in. "Dude, this is messed up," Tony whispered, gripping the textbook tighter. "We need to figure this out." I nodded, my mouth dry. "Maybe it's coming from the vent or something. These old buildings have weird acoustics." There was a small vent grate near the floor, tucked behind the couch. We never paid it much attention before. Honestly, it was so grimy we avoided it. Mike crouched down, shining his light through the slats. I can't see much, it's too dark. That's when the tapping turned into a low, guttural groan, human unmistakably, and coming from right behind the vent. We stumbled back, knocking over a chair. My mind raced. The vent led to the maintenance tunnels, right? The ones campus security always said were locked up tight. But what if someone had gotten in? I think we should get out of here, Mike said, standing up fast. Call security or something. Before he could move, though, the groan stopped, and then the vent grate popped off with a clang, skittering across the floor. Then a guy crawled out, skinny, wild-eyed, clothes filthy like he'd been sleeping in dirt. He didn't say a word, he just stared at us for a split second, his breath ragged, before bolting upright and sprinting for the door. We yelled and scrambled out of his way as he yanked it open and disappeared down the hall, footsteps echoing until they faded. For a few seconds we all just stood there, panting, too shocked to speak. Tony slammed the door shut and locked it, his hands trembling. What just happened? He was in there, I said, my voice barely a whisper. He was in the vent, listening to us. Mike was already dialing security and pacing the room. Yeah, hi, we just had some dude crawl out of our vent and run off. No, I'm not kidding. Get over here now. When security showed up, we explained everything. The noises, the vent, and the guy. They searched the tunnels, the dorm, and the whole building, but predictably found nothing. There were no footprints and no signs of a break-in. They said the vents were supposed to be sealed and that no one could have gotten in there without tools. But we saw him. We heard him. And the worst part? The vent cover wasn't screwed on. It had just been sitting there, loose, the whole time we'd lived there. After that night, we couldn't relax in the common area anymore. Every creak, every tap made us jump. We started locking the door religiously, even when we were all inside, and we never touched that vent again. Campus security actually brushed it off as a prank or a one-off, but we knew better. That guy had been in there with us, maybe not just that night, but others too, hiding and waiting. And the scariest part was that we never even noticed. And those bro chats we loved, they stopped. The dorm didn't feel like ours anymore. It felt like his.